The Islanders have made a sneaky signing, bringing in a player to the organization who at one point was considered to be one of the best prospects in the world. In addition, we have an update on where one of the Islanders' top prospects is going to be playing next season as we get an update on their development. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest. Really quickly before we get into the signing and then talking about Kashawn Aitcheson, our goal is to hit 2,000 subscribers, and we keep on pushing towards that goal. Appreciate all the support from all you Islander fans as we continue to make content every single day. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And now let's talk about this signing that the Islanders made. And on the surface, this is not a huge signing, an AHL signing for the Islanders, a player who, if the Islanders wanted to call up, they would have to upgrade his contract. But you might recognize that name, Sean Day. A long time ago, Sean Day was actually given exceptional status in the OHL, was allowed to participate a year early. And if you think about other players who got exceptional status, we're talking about players like Connor McDavid, John Tavares, most recently Michael Misa. This is a status that is pretty rare. I believe it's only been given out 5 or 6 times now. And out of all those players, Sean Day is the biggest bust of the bunch. Still, the Islanders bringing him in on defense for the AHL is definitely an interesting move. It is notable that this player has played 2 games in the NHL for the Tampa Bay Lightning. You also might remember he was once a Rangers prospect, and by the time the draft happened, he had already fallen off significantly. Sean Day is an interesting player where I think a big issue was just that he had so much pressure put onto him by that exceptional status that it ended up collapsing him. And I really wonder if he would have been a decent third pair defenseman if he didn't go through all that. He spent time in the ECHL, spent a lot of time in the AHL. This is not a player who I expect to really play any games for the Islanders unless there are a bunch of injuries to the defense. Though I'll note, the past few seasons, they've had quite a few defensemen who I thought would not play a single game, play multiple games, just the way that Adam Pelech and Ryan Pollock seem to get injured every single time, always at the same time. So it's definitely possible that Sean Day plays a game in the NHL. But I think this is more notable for the AHL team, bringing in a veteran with a lot of experience. This is a good player to bring in. Now, the one question I do have is Sean Day plays the left side of defense. And that's notable because when we talk about the Islanders' top prospects on defense, they all play the left side. In fact, most of the Islanders' defensemen in the system play the left side. It's definitely something I think they're going to have to address next draft, if not in a trade at some point, especially now that Noah Dobbs is gone. Well, I think that was a good trade. The right side is looking like an absolute mess for the future. On the left side, you already have Isaiah George, who may make the NHL team, which in that case, adding a player like Sean Day who can play, especially considering the goal for the AHL is to win more games this season. If you're losing Isaiah George, you're gonna need to replace him. Sean Day is a pretty good player to play some minutes in the AHL. Cal Audulus is also on the left side, and then Jesse Pulkkinen. All 3 relatively good prospects for the Islanders on the left side. So the one thing I do hope is that Sean Day will be playing his right, because you don't want any of these prospects to be playing their offside, unless the one exception I will give, Isaiah George has actually came out and said that he's pretty comfortable playing on the right. I think the Islanders might do good experimenting with him playing on the right full time to see how that works, see if that can be an option long term. Again, you don't have to be left-handed to play the left side in the NHL. There are plenty of players who play their offside, typically offensive-minded players like their offside, because it gives them better shooting opportunities. So if Isaiah George wants to attempt that, I think that would be a really interesting thing. But just going a little more into this signing, I don't expect much, if anything, from Sean Day. If the Islanders had acquired him a few years ago, this would have been a different story. Islander fans, I think you remember your Ranger fan friends for a while. They would talk about this player as if he was the steal of the draft, the guy who got exceptional status. He had a rough time in junior, and then he started to put it back together. And that was true for a while with Sean Day. Unfortunately, between injuries and other mishaps, he just never seemed to fully put it together. It's nice to see that he's really making more of a comeback as a full-time AHL player after taking a year off playing in the SHL. definitely think this is a good addition. It's never a bad idea to add a guy on an AHL contract who's played NHL games if you are in dire need, dire emergency of another defenseman. Again, you would have to even upgrade this. This is an AHL deal, so there's really no costs if you want to whine about Chris Lamoriello or whatever. I do feel like, especially considering that he previously was in the Lightning system, I do believe this is a Mathew Barzal signing. Again, there is some misunderstanding on what AHL general managers do. Generally, the NHL general manager still has a huge say in what the AHL team does. And notably, with Lou Lamoriello, one of the biggest things was he just had no interest in spending any money at all at the AHL level, which as a result, we had the Bridgeport Islanders. Now, I do want to move to what several of you are probably waiting for in this video and talk about Kashawn Aitcheson and a decision that honestly surprised me. While I was a little surprised about Schaefer deciding to sign his entry-level contract, it did make a lot of sense considering he is a first overall pick. However, when I guessed that both these players would be playing college, I was confident that Kashawn Aitcheson would be playing college hockey next season. That is not the case. He is going back to the OHL, has not signed an entry-level contract yet, so that college option does remain available in the future, although especially after next season in the OHL, would not make sense for the Islanders to send Kashawn Aitcheson to college after that. But it is notable that this can still happen in the future. If plans can still change. He hasn't signed an ELC, but it seems like Kashawn Aitcheson will not be playing college. And we discussed on this channel why I thought college hockey was the best option for Kashawn Aitcheson. Now that's not the case, let's talk about what to really expect from him now that he's going to be playing another season in the OHL. And the big reason, especially with Kashawn Aitcheson, why I wanted him to play college, because I thought with him, the biggest asset Kashawn Aitcheson has is just his pure physicality. This is a player who, even though I think there is some offensive upside, which we're going to talk about in just a bit, which actually could benefit from playing in the OHL, just his physicality is so key to his success as a future NHL player, and it felt like college was a better place to really refine that, get rid of some of the dirtier hits. Although I will say, for a player who likes to play very physical, Kashawn Aitcheson already did a really good job in his draft year, cutting down the penalties by 40 minutes. That is significant. Like to see those cut back a little more. It's okay to take some penalties, especially when you're fighting, when you're playing super physical, but if you can get that in the OHL to a rate around 60, 55, that would be absolutely beautiful for Aitcheson. But beyond that, it just seemed like it would be more beneficial from the physical side of his game for him to start competing against players who are 23, 24, 22 years old, that type, instead of players who in the OHL, he's going to be playing players his age, players older than him at 18 years old, but he's also going to be playing 16-year-olds, and I honestly feel incredibly bad for any 16-year-old player trying to raise their draft stock who runs into Kashawn Aitcheson. Several players talked about how Kashawn Aitcheson was the least fun player to play against in the entire OHL, and I'm sure they are miserable to see him coming back for another season. Now, as an Islander fan, in terms of development, we've talked about the penalties a little bit, but really what we want to see from Kashawn Aitcheson in the OHL, and this is the one thing that I don't think he would have gotten in college, so while I was more pro-college, I can look forward to this, and that is we're going to get a chance to see some more offensive development. That is something to definitely keep an eye on. As we talked about in a previous video, Kashawn Aitcheson was actually the lead point scorer of the Prairie Colts. It was not a very high-scoring team. He helped lead them to the playoffs with 59 points. If Kashawn Aitcheson could take another step up next season, put up even more points, then we can really start to see if he can develop into an offensive or a two-way defenseman. I think with Kashawn Aitcheson, the physicality is there. At this point, he's more of a defensive type defenseman who just plays the body and also chips in a little offense. Now he's going to get the opportunity to really develop another level of that offense. One thing that's a downside when it comes to college is sometimes these players coming up from the OHL don't typically get big minutes right away, especially if they don't earn them. So you might have had a situation where Kashawn Aitcheson really wasn't getting that many offensive zone time or really any top power play minutes. Now on the Prairie Colts, you know Kashawn Aitcheson is going to get top power play time, and it'll be really interesting to see if he kind of stagnates around this 50-60 point mark, or if he can hit another level going above a point per game. That's really the best case scenario for the New York Islanders. If Kashawn Aitcheson can prove himself to be a two-way threat, which I believe he is, and even if he isn't, I think his floor as a defensive defenseman is so high. I don't understand why he went 17th overall. I'm not going to keep on talking about that because I am so glad he did go 17th overall. This is a player who should have gone higher, and if he puts up big offensive numbers on the Prairie Colts next season, then a lot of teams are going to regret passing up on him. But let me know what you think about all this. What do you think about the Sean Day signing? Do you remember Sean Day from back in the day where he was considered a highly touted prospect? Again, when you get exceptional status, people are assuming you are going to be first overall, if not second. And let me know what you think about Kashawn Aitcheson not playing college. Again, it was something I preferred, but I'm not going to make too big of a deal of this. I'm sure the Islanders and Kashawn Aitcheson have a really solid plan for his development, and I have no reason not to trust Darsh and his team. If you haven't already, please be sure to like this video. I'm your host, Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders!